questions you have. If we have the music, we might be able to look at what it is you're asking. Hi, everyone. 46 Lobo 1. Hi. Uh, I'll start off by saying the next live stream is scheduled to be. Geez, when was the day? There was one. I put a vote on Patreon, but not many people are voting. So the other one is on Wednesday. Now I'm just doing this by memory because I wrote it down somewhere. But I think it's Wednesday at 1 o'clock. Either way, it's in the description so you can see it there. If you want to support the channel, come on Patreon. Check out Patreon. There's a new exclusive lesson for Patreons on the Chopin Barcarolle of about an hour and 10 minutes. And there'll be a little preview of that also coming up on YouTube soon. So there we have it. So you guys can go ahead and start asking questions. I'll start out by asking a question from Matthias, one of my patrons who couldn't make it today on the live stream, but was asking about tension in the arm and doing rotation and wheel and stuff like that, but still having tension in the arm, and what is a way to prevent tendonitis. So doing wheel and rotation and things like that doesn't mean that you're not going to be tense. It's not the thing which will fix the tension. However, it can help a lot if you're used to using finger kind of technique a lot, and that's causing tension in the hand and the arm. But it's not to say that if you use finger technique all the time that you're tense. It's not necessarily the case. I don't think it's the case with everyone. So it's kind of, again, it would be easier to address if I could see exactly what he's doing, but you have to really see it's possible to do wheel and still be kind of tight. So find where the tightness is. It could be in the hands, it could be in the arm, it can also be in the shoulders. And you really have to make an effort to really focus regularly and a lot on relaxation as much as you can, and try to find where the tension is, because usually what happens is we're not aware of it in the first place. So the other thing that really helps is get a massage, this kind of stuff, or even if you have pain somewhere, you can go see a really good osteopath. Sometimes that helps you just find these places that were tense, that you were holding tension you didn't even know about. So those things could help a lot. I would suggest to, think about inside the hand. There can be some tension here in this, if this locks. Oh, here's one thing. I'll end this question on this that you can try. Let's say you have a chord. If you notice that you do this, which is kind of locking here, instead of something like this, well, what you can do is bring the thumbs up as a little practice. Maybe don't do it too much, because you might start, playing like this in a way that's possibly inappropriate. But what you can do is this sort of thing. This helps a lot to actually relax inside the hand. So you're bringing the thumbs like this, kind of opening the hands. Maybe a little bit also forward like this, but then bringing this up. See how that works for clearing tension. That's a trick pretty much from Julian Martin. What's going on, Robert? Thanks for joining. Hi, Alessandro. What do you think about Evgeny Kissin? And do you know Nicolas Economou? I don't know Nicolas Economou. What do I think of Evgeny Kissin? Well, he's a really good pianist, that's for sure. I don't listen to him all the time. I remember listening to the Liszt Transcendental Etudes and being like really impressed with this guy. He's definitely he's really good at playing Russian music and like really like thick kind of romantic stuff. But he's definitely an amazing pianist. I mean, there's no question about that. Question, what exercise can help me repeat two notes, E and F, fast? Chopin Nocturne, Opus 9, number 2, E flat major. E and F fast. Is that like a trill? Because I'm left hand, so my right hand fingers are slow. How to improve that? I'm not sure exactly what you mean, Lobo. Repeat two notes, E and F fast. Is that a trill you're talking about? Maybe you could just clarify that, or where in that nocturne that is specifically. Then we could look at that specific part. You guys asked a lot of questions about nocturnes. That's cool. Because you're left-handed, so my right hand fingers are slow. How to improve that? Okay. Yes, trills. Okay, trills with E and F. Well, we talked about trills a lot in one of these. You can experiment with different fingers, not just okay. This was right hand trills you said, or left hand. It's probably a right hand thing, but try also 2/4 is very good for trills. 2/3, and notice what I'm doing here. It's not just this, and not just this, but this as well. Kind of, you can try doing only rotation in the trill, and then kind of mix it up a little bit. So that should help. That's how I recommend doing trills. Again, if we look at the specific section, maybe we could go in that more detail. Robert says, could you walk us through your process of learning a new piece from the moment you first sit down to the moment you're ready to perform your piece? Okay, that's a big question. Okay, let's see. I'm almost tempted to move backwards in this, and I don't even know where to start. Well, when starting to learn something, the first practice, most of the time, I'm a little like impatient and not so into it, and I find that generally, like just the first 3 days of learning the piece, that's when I get into it. After like the second day and the third day, that's when I'm like really starting to really enjoy it. That's what I would say. So that's in the beginning. There's it depends also if we're talking about something that you're performing like solo that you learn by heart. I mean, let's take that example as opposed to chamber music, which I find I can learn so much faster because I don't memorize it. We traditionally play with the scores for chamber music. So if you're learning a piece by heart, well, we can kind of divide things into 3 phases that I find work very well, and that's pretty much how it goes for me and anyone, I think. The first stage is cognizing all of the music. Okay, these are the notes, this is the rhythm, finding out what goes where, maybe deciding some musical things that you have to do as well, but learning, getting used to playing the notes and all this stuff, applying the technique in certain places, although that can also come much later. Then the second part is that's probably more where we're applying the technique actually and memorizing the piece. That's the hardest part, and usually where a lot of people feel like they reach a plateau or something. But usually in that part, that's where I have to really push myself if I'm memorizing something, and often I get tired of playing the same thing. So in that case, if you've been practicing something like very regularly every day, then it's actually good after a while to take a little break from it. You'll find that taking a couple of days off and then coming back, maybe 3 days. If you've been working really hard before, then you come back and maybe you need a little practice, but you find that it's actually a lot easier. You're kind of like, you need time to process it away as well. So that might also happen in that phase. Then finally, the third phase is where things start to become automated. You don't have to think about exactly like doing, let's say, this technique everywhere. Maybe you're just starting to pinpoint certain points. You know the music by heart. It starts to become automated, and then that's really the most fun stage. So then you're just working, making music with that, and you don't have to work so you don't have to work your. It's more creative, let's say, that part. It's a little less intellectual because you've already kind of established things like the right notes and the rhythm and the way to play it, and then memorizing the music. And now you're starting to be really creative and finding something to do with that. Until I'm ready to sit down and perform the piece. Well, what happens after that? I mean, this is a really general overlook. If you want to look at more detail, there is a video on the list second transcendental etude that I kind of went through this process in a practice if I was to sit down and start learning a piece that I don't know at all. So that could be a little like tangent from this question. But when it comes to actually sit down and perform the piece, yeah, I suppose, if I'm really here's what I like to do actually. When I get to the end, once I know the actual music, I'm able to execute the piece. Then it comes to the performance. Then I start thinking about, if sometimes I forget to do this, but I find it really makes a difference, is to think about what is it that I want to give by playing this music. And I just kind of set an intention that it's going to be good. Not just that I'm going to play well, but that I'm going to deliver and offer something that's going to be meaningful as much as possible to whoever's open to receiving it. And if I really want to play well, which I think we all do, we have this kind of like, self-critical in a rather mostly good way, and a kind of, let's say, for lack of better words, perfectionist. But we want to do a good job, so it kind of set that intention before playing. That I like to think about how it is I'd like to feel when I'm finished performing. Actually, that's a very good idea. You can think about how it is you'd like to feel when you're done, and that kind of helps you set that intention and to be in line with, let's say, ending up feeling that way in the end. So that's about it. Another thing that I like to do also, if I have the time, is play in the hall before, try the piano out, sit in the hall, kind of like work the room of the hall if you have time. Just to, like sit and, like, let's say, like you sit somewhere where the audience will be sitting, and imagine yourself playing on stage and what it is to deliver something from there to where it is that you're sitting, just to get a general feel of the room and where you are in the space that you have to broadcast. And that's also something that I usually do, although I do forget sometimes. But again, I think it makes a difference if you just kind of work the space where you're performing a little bit. Hi, Boziso. I know a Boziso in Montreal, actually. I don't know if you guys are related. She lives at, anyway, Image d'Outremont. I don't know if that means anything to you. Can you give some tips about pedaling in general, focusing maybe when both hands play in different sides of the piano? Different sides, so different registers, I think you mean. Pedaling in general. Well, in general, there's like different levels of pedaling. There's a kind of easy way of pedaling, which is not pedaling very often, and then an advanced way of pedaling, where you're pedaling basically all the time. So what I like to do, I just, if you want to look at more details, I did put a video on this recently, but I like to play the first chord and then put the pedal down, because if you put the pedal down and play the first chord, you're activating much more harmonics in the piano. So it's a different kind of sound. Depends what you want. And then generally, on the next chord, as you play, you lift with your foot at the same time. And then the foot has to go back down very quick. So this is basic stuff. If you want to look at really basic stuff, you can go back to that video about pedaling. It's about a month old. But for me, what I would say is, you have to lift the foot at the same time that you play the next chord if you want it to be really clear. The other thing you can do, if we go into more, let's go into like a more advanced pedaling for more advanced pianists. There's things sometimes you might even pedal certain ways just to hear things better when you might not necessarily play them that way. But let's look at this Brahms Intermezzo Opus 118, number 2. So one thing we can do here is pedal here, pedal. See, now I'm kind of, I've been doing this recently, is you can pedal here, pedal, and then pedal here, and then pedal here, and pedal here on the A, and then pedal again here. Now, if we go more hardcore in our pedaling, what we could probably do that I think sounds much better and resembles more what Brahms wrote is to pedal, pedal, and then pedal again here. So we hear that here, and again here. So we hear something different because we get to hear the A in the bass. Same here. It's still an A like the bass. But we hear Tom, A. Now, if we go a little more extreme, possibly too extreme, what we might do, however, it would be possibly too extreme to perform it this way. I don't want to say it is or it isn't, but it's definitely feasible to practice it this way in order to hear better, would be to pedal here, to hear very clearly, and not the two notes at the same time. Now that's a really kind of very advanced pedaling. So maybe one thing I'll say for everyone is that most of what you develop in the pedal is going to happen from the ear. It always comes from this desire to hear things more clearly. And whatever you do with your foot, once you have the basic stuff down about pedaling, that's going to start happening automatically, very, very automatically. It's not something you'll think about the technical aspect with the pedal anymore. Hi, Joel. Glad you made it. Hey, Wojciech. I'm not sure how to say your name, but I did answer your question last time. I don't know if you heard it at the beginning of the other live stream, last one. What do you think of Walter Giesecke's book where he describes his memorization process? He was known to have an immense repertoire. He learned all his pieces memorized from start to finish. He would memorize from the keyboard and be able to recite almost all the bars of the piece before actually practicing the piece. Wow. What are your thoughts? Well, I'm not familiar with his with that. That's the first time I hear about it. Well, that's really intense. I think you have to have a kind of gift to be able to do this. You know, he learned all his pieces memorized from start to finish. Yeah. Well, that sounds really hardcore, you know, like memorizing everything before actually practicing it. That's really intense. Like I think it's a little maybe it worked for him, but if you're able to do that, like you must have like a godly amount of patience. That's really incredible. It's good to start memorizing your pieces as you start learning them. That's very good. For beginners, the pitfall of that is if you're not good at sight reading and reading, you know, and being able to follow along with the music, you kind of just you don't develop that skill because you use the memorization as a kind of, let's say, a retreat away from having to read in the book, and then you can't follow along. But in general, if you have good sight reading, then you start doing that. You start memorizing things like right away when you start learning it. That's very good. I wouldn't really like just like memorize the whole piece before I actually start practicing physically. But what is very good is to listen to, when you listen to the music, listen to it with the score, follow along with the score, and you'll find you improve your photographic memory and that sort of thing. That's very good. Very good idea. I think if you do something like him, you must have an astounding ear plus memory and the comprehension of musical theory and that sort of stuff, and a lot of experience. You know, you could try it out with a very easy piece, you know, like maybe one of those Clementi sonatinas, you know, or something from a sight reading book. That would be something to actually start practicing that. That'd be interesting. I've never tried that, so I can't really say. But it's a very interesting idea. You could try that with a sight reading thing, you know. Take a small thing and sit down and memorize it. Take as long as you need to memorize it, and maybe go back to the book. You know, let's say you memorize a certain bar, of music, kind of come back to that instead of going back to the piano. You're just coming back to it and replaying it in your mind and listening to it, and then go play it on the piano. Let me know how that goes. Maybe I'll try it myself. That's a very interesting. Doped Deer says, just started playing Debussy, Dr. Gradus ad Parnassum. Great. That's such a beautiful piece. I love that. How should I practice it to make it sound more smooth? Feels like I'm playing pretty harsh at the moment. Any tips on that piece? Thank you for bringing that up. I'm really happy because I just did a cleanup in my scores this week, which actually took me like 2 hours. So I can actually find that. I wasn't even remembering that I had that piece here. So how can we make this more smooth? It definitely has to be a very smooth piece. Well, you know, everything that you do that's going to connect notes more and more in one gesture is making things smoother. Obviously, this is more smooth than this. You know, this sounds more ticky-tacky. But this is such a great piece for wheel. I'm happy you bring this up again. I need to give this piece to learn to more of my students. You just have wheel everywhere. There isn't even any rotation in here, you know. There's like none. Which is kind of funny. He's always writing in maybe here. So look at this wheel very, very clearly. If you're not familiar with the wheel, check out as many videos on the wheel as you can. So you really know what to do here. Getting this kind of movement, same as you do in this exercise. And like we said in the other stream last stream, even if you're doing something that's only going up, it's still a full wheel because you come back down between the top and the bottom. So this is the same. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 4, 3. So between the 4 and the 1, that's where we're coming back over in the wheel. See here you have. So you have your whole wheel there. And then you want to start learning to do it like this and not like this. Pay close attention visually to your fingers so that you're doing this. That should really make it smooth, you know. So you do this. Play them all at the same time and then just kind of do like as if you were playing a chord and rolling it. And then go. Just roll the whole thing. Now it's almost too smooth, you know, we don't even have the definition of. Let's see what else you might have in here. You have your little. Similar everywhere. It's such a similar kind of thing. That's the left hand. Possibly another thing that might make it sound a little choppy is the dynamics that you put in there. So, you know, find which notes are more important and reduce everything else less. We have to do this sort of thing a lot in Debussy. It's kind of the way he writes his music. So you have this kind of texture, and then this, which is very soft, and then this one, which is more expressive. Then this one goes up to here, and then up to here. See how that goes. What piano are you playing? I was looking for a nice upright piano. I saw a second-hand upright Steinway for 3,800 euros. A second-hand upright Steinway. Pretty good. How old is it? But also Yamaha U1 and 3 look nice, yeah. Well, this is a very old piano. You know, this is called a Lansdowne. I've never seen a piano like this one. It's kind of been like passed around through a few friends of mine. So I really like the sound on it, but it doesn't stay in tune. You know, you tune it and like a few days, a week later, it's completely out of tune. So I would need to replace this. Uh, and a second-hand upright Steinway for 3,800 euros is, it depends on, you know, what kind of condition it's in, but it could be a very good piano. Where do you live? I'm curious. I've seen an upright Steinway in Switzerland. Actually, it's in this small hotel in Interlaken. What a damn nice piano. I was amazed at the, I think it was a very old piano that they had restored. So I love restored old pianos, old restored Steinways. Those are great. But, you know, if it's in decent condition, that could be pretty nice. Yamaha U1 and 3. You know, I much prefer secondhand pianos than new ones, and every piano is different. You have to try each specific piano. Even, you know, when one factory makes 100 pianos in 1 year, there's not two of them that are the same. It's always, there's all kinds of little subtleties. I've been able to memorize 2 pages so far of the Beethoven Sonata. I can pretty much recite the harmonies and visualize most notes as well as imagine my fingers on the keys. Good for you. That's really good. When you say recite, that means you would be able to sit down and recompose the piece, I assume. See, I've only been able to do that after like relearning a piece so many times. Takes crazy amount of mental practice and patience. I'm always so eager just to practice on the keys, though. I can imagine. Well, you have a lot of patience doing that. Kim Yim, tips on third and fourth movement of Rock 2. No, tips for the third movement of Rock 2. I was like, there's a fourth movement of Rock 2 I didn't know about? Okay, let's look at Rock 2. Cool, we get some Rock 2. For the third movement, this is gonna be fun. Okay, let's see. I think some of the hardest things in this is all these all those sort of things. So that's one of the first things you can start looking for. We can look at general things here, but if you're specific, we could look at a specific place that you might like us to look more, because you know, I could spend 3 hours talking about this. So, you know, well, let's look at this thing here. So you have, there's something I found helped immensely in this sort of thing, was to do this forward and then this one back. So this is kind of like this. So we have this forward, in, and out, in, out. Now in the left hand, do the opposite. Go into this one. So you're kind of playing this one out. So now you have this kind of going like this and this. It's like you're doing this. This was a thing that I found just did it for me learning this passage. Until I got that, I always struggled with it, especially getting it up to tempo. So again, it's like this and then this. Now again, it's mirrored in this thing, but this is my right hand. So the right hand's going in when the left hand's out, and then they switch. Yeah, else do we have in here? Again, if you're more specific on a certain part or what exactly it is that you want to hear in there, we can talk about that, and how to go about this, because again, like I said, we could spend hours on it. There's so much stuff, especially here is more a listening place. Sorry. So there's a lot of little things you can listen to in here. You need to hear the B, this B flat, transform with the new harmony here. So you need this. Not satisfied. Maybe that's the one that's. So it takes a little time to hear those things. There's certain notes in the left hand that you can bring out. Sorry. The A flat here. Then the G flat. Now, again, those top notes in the left hand are very nice. So you can bring those out sometimes. Yeah, we can look at this in detail if you want to look at specific sections. Eventually, I'd like to do entire lessons on both Rock 3 and Rock 2, which would go on the website. That was helpful already, I'm glad. If you have any other questions there of specific things in Rock 2, don't be shy, just ask. How about this Allegro scherzando più mosso after that theme? Okay. Well, so that's this. I'd have to look at it again. I haven't played it in a long time, but I think there's something you have to establish rhythmically in here. Yeah, okay, so just the start of that. So you would have to kind of... You see where that, in the left hand, where you start on an offbeat note, so you have the G. And you can practice like that as well. Now... If the octaves are a problem, well, you do this practice where you play the note, you do whatever movement you have to do to make the sound in the key, and then you rest, and then you go get the next one. See, it was a little not precise. Do it again, rest, and then go. Still same thing, rest, until you're really hitting it very accurately. But it's the resting that's going to actually make this kind of relaxation in the arm, where it just goes straight to the next note. And you have to remember also, you make your sound on each note. So you make your sound on this one, which is going to be more than just that, right? You don't relax right away because you need a certain bit of tension to make the sound. And then relax. And now, when you go get the A flat, make your sound in the A flat as well, like this. And then rest, and you can just keep going like this. Rest. Now you have a B up here. So again, this is all relaxed. Now we're going to go make our sound on the B and then rest. And rest. And then going from note to note like this. Eventually it'll feel kind of like your arm is like a heavy mop that's full of water. You're kind of like dragging this heavy mop full of water. That should help with that stuff. Musically, what do we have? Well, just a big crescendo, and you could probably like split it in two parts, and then yeah, that's about okay. Let's go on from there. That was fun. Glad that helps. Doped deer. If you can find a Baldwin BP5, those are pretty good. Yeah, there's some old Baldwins. Actually, the other piano I play on sometimes that's at one of my friends' places nearby. That's an old restored Baldwin, and it sounds pretty good. It's a nice one. Do you prefer grand or upright? Really? Does anyone prefer uprights to grand? I've never heard of that. Does anyone like rather play on an upright than a grand? I mean, there's some uprights that will sound better than some grands, But in general, a grand is always better. You have a better control over the action. The the way the action is made is just better on a grand. It really works because you're you're pushing down to lift something up, whereas on an upright you're kind of the mechanism is a little different to knock. So I like this kind of uh, thing on a grand piano where the hammer is actually an extension of the note horizontally. That's the real deal. What's the other big difference on a grand is the strings are longer and you can make more sounds. So that's that. Grands not have almost uh, more often than not have almost better everything, really. Yeah, that's true. One exception being that uprights are starting to get magnetic actions, so that's a huge leap forward in the industry. I've seen some things also like that. There's one of my friends here in Montreal has this piano workshop, and he makes pianos. And recently they're starting this new thing with uprights based. It was designed. It's a German design called Fender or something like that, or Fander. I can't remember. And they have a different kind of thing going on in that piano that gives it an extremely good response, like a grand piano. But in the end, nothing really tops a grand, I think. Anyway, if you can score a Canadian, hi Mike, a Canadian Heitzman from the 30s, 40s, they're a fraction of the price and as good as a Steinway. Yeah, that's really interesting. They're awesome. I paid $2,000 Canadian for mine. Wow, good for you. Old Becksteins are really decent too. That's very nice. Yeah, Heinzmans are supposed to be pretty good. I guess an old restored Heinzman must be pretty amazing. For $2,000, that's great. That's something I've been considering because it's quite affordable. I just might have to move into a bigger apartment to fit a grand piano here. Tips on Bach Symphonia Number 8. Hand manageability, flexibility for finger switches. Okay, Symphonia Number 8. Let's take that out. And flexibility for finger switches. I'm not sure exactly what you mean in there, but let's can get these. Here we go. Bach Symphonia Number 8. Oh yeah. I'm not sure exactly what your question is. Maybe we can just look at that. Hand flexibility. I'm not sure where it is that you need the flexibility. Is it in controlling several voices at the same time, doing something like this? You can practice this sort of. This is good, the exercise on independence of fingers. So you learn to hold certain notes down while having other ones relaxed. And you can do this also from the keys. See, not necessarily like this, but from the keys and go up. So you can look at that. Those sort of exercises might help. And then if there's a specific thing, we can look at that too. Or we could always do a Skype lesson, and then we could go through the whole thing and really like look at exactly what you're doing. Heinzmann pianos are really good. I had the chance to play one here in California. Cool. I believe 6'3" or 4. Had a really great actions. That's great. What's my opinion about digital pianos? Oh man, I despise digital pianos. I really do. Um, I've tried a couple of really good ones. Uh, you know, Even really good ones, I find there's just something about. To me, this is this is the this is my take on it. I play on digital pianos when I have to, but for me, making music is really an acoustic thing. I love the acoustic aspect of it, and that ends pretty much there. Just making a string, making a sound come out of a string, and making that string vibrate with another one. It's different, making that come out of a loudspeaker. But that having been said, there's some very good digital pianos, and when you have a good pair of headphones as well, they sound pretty good. So there's a lot of good to be said about digital pianos and the kind of technology also that's being created to make digital pianos that have really amazing feel as well on them. So, but I don't practice on them. I never do, unless I'm just fooling around. Would a 5'8" grand piano be worth it? I sometimes hear that grand pianos should be at least 6 feet to be considered worthwhile. That's an interesting thing. I find there's also a really big difference between those 5'8" and 6 feet. I would agree on that. I wouldn't say that it's not worth it. It depends on, again, your budget and how much room you have, like everyone's saying. But I do notice a huge difference between those 5'8" and the 6 feet. It's just something about it. But I don't want to discredit a 5'8" grand, but there is a difference. You could fit a 5'8" grand piano in practice room that small. Well, that's good. Go for it. Would you mind giving some pedaling tips for Opus 10 number 12 so that it isn't overly muddy but also not super dry? Okay, cool. That's obviously a Chopin we're talking about. I like how we just say Opus 10 number 12 and we know what we're talking about. So let's look at that. Pedaling in Opus 10 number 12. Let's use the IKEA one this time. Let's see what's there. So this is the revolutionary etude. Okay, so let's experiment, What happens if we just leave the pedal down? And what happens if we cut the half note at the middle of the bar the way it's written? I really like that. It's kind of like pam, pa da dee, and so you have. I think that sounds a heck of a lot better than leaving it down. So try to make that half note exactly a half note, because he would have probably written. We can go with like intellectual stuff, like say he would have written a whole note if he wanted it to be the whole bar, but intuitively you can tell because it sounds so right when you pedal it that way. So there's kind of like a surprise in this chord, very surprising tension kind of sound, but there's also a tension in the release of the sound that disappears. So here what I would do is I would pedal twice a bar here, you know, in the left hand. So here, that gives it a kind of rhythmic impulse. So again, pedal, 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 pedal. And same thing. Is that how I do it? Here you can just remove the pedal if you want. Or a little, or you just put a little bit, but you're always shaking it. So again, it's a question of ear. You have to kind of decide for yourself what's appropriate. But in general, again, it sounds a bit too muddy, like you're saying. So you can lift the pedal towards those second beats. So see, it actually kind of makes an interesting effect in the crescendo that sounds even better if you lift the pedal where you have the main point of the hairpin, as we call them. So again, you would pedal here, again here, now here. Very important to pedal here. You have to experiment and see, does it sound too muddy if you leave the pedal down for the whole thing? So you don't have to pedal on the first and third beats. You could be pedaling on the second and fourth beats. Pedal here, pedal again. So that's another idea. Or you can just pedal on every beat, which I think is what I would recommend for this sort of thing. So yeah, I would pedal like almost every beat, you know, in a lot of places. I never learned this part, but you can definitely pedal on those beats. That's going to make a clearer kind of sound. In general, just experiment with it, you know, experiment different things and see what sounds best. There's always a lot of possibilities in there, but that should help a little bit. Someone agrees on me with digital pianos. Okay. There are finger switches on the second page, the minor section. That's in the Bach Symphonia. Finger switches. Finger switches. Does that mean like when you play a note and you switch the finger on the same note without releasing it? Yeah, again, in the minor section on the second page. I don't know where you mean, so maybe these things here, those sort of things. I'm not sure exactly. It's kind of maybe a slightly complicated question. .5'7" and below maybe, but 5'8" should be just fine. Okay, that's maybe, maybe that's it. It's also the 5/7 that you'll find a big difference. So, the thing is to try out the pianos and see what you can do on them. You always have to, you know, it's not so much about there's only so much that can be about, like, let's say, like the brand, it's a Heinzmann or it's a Steinway, because they're all different. And some of them are better. And if you're buying secondhand, then you never know, like if you have a nice Steinway, but there's a big crack in the soundboard, that's not very good. So, crazy broken chords exercises ideas for Beethoven Opus 54 in F major sonata. Opus 54 in F major. Okay, let's find that. Which one is that? Opus. Whoa. Stay up there. Opus 54. We're in the right book, page 128. Here we go, page 128. Aha. So this is. And where exactly did you say in that sonata? Crazy broken chord exercise ideas. So you mean to break the chords like when you have this stuff? I'm not sure if that's what you mean. Broken chord exercises. I don't know if that's what you mean, but let's just go into that. That could be kind of cool. Well, be creative with this sort of stuff. You can do stuff like this. You can do stuff like that. You can arpeggiate it like we did. Or you can go. Do stuff like that, and then you see we did. Then you can do the opposite. That stuff is very good. Then you're actually turning it into a rotation exercise doing that. You could do, you could be so creative. I used to love doing this. Play them, with the hands backwards. I guess that names a few. You could do stuff like that. I must be missing some. What if you did? We didn't do that one. So see the different kind of rotations you could do with this, or which is also, and the fourth one would. You could do stuff like that. I have no idea if that's what you meant, but second movement of the sonata. Okay, let's look at that in the second movement. That's going to change some stuff. Well, we looked at some pretty cool stuff there. There's some pretty cool stuff we can do. That can be a fun way of practicing. You can just take parts of fragments of things and arrange them differently to get to know it better. Okay, this. I think this is the first time I read this ever. Well, notice how in your rotation here, you can do some kind of wheel at the same time. You can do this sort of thing. So not just going like this, back and forth, but also bringing it like this. also this movement here in there. You should also practice this like this. See, if I was going to learn this right now for a piece that I think it's the first time I read it, I think I would do something like that. You can also go. So see, I have a little problem there, so I would keep working on that, and that would probably make the overall thing a lot better. Just kind of like learning it through the lens of this altered version. So we can do something like that. Yeah, again, when I see you play, it's different because then we can address very specific things, but in general, that's something that we can try. Okay, lots of comments here. Digital piano is good for learning notes at 2, 3 in the morning without annoying your neighbors. Still a synthesizer, if you treat them as such, they're fine, but not a piano. Some people are going to get pissed off, you know, because anyway, I don't like digital pianos, so I'm not going to defend them. I read that Kawai make the most realistic digital pianos. I'm no expert in digital pianos, guys, so love the Revolutionary too. Glad you love it. Switching fingers on the same note without releasing. Yeah, that's your thing. Well, that's very good, actually. It's a good thing to do. I don't know where specifically you're doing it in there, but that's a very good thing to do, and it just opens up so many more possibilities for fingerings. Eventually, if you get used to doing that sort of thing, you start doing it very easily without thinking about it. Even in some places, it'll just be a natural fingering you'll come up with. So yeah, I don't know where you have that exactly. If it's like written in the minor part, you have like here with a 4 changing to a 5. The thing is, if you're gonna separate it, you could just do 5. The fingerings in Henley edition are usually not so great anyway. It depends on the editor. It's not always the case, but see, if you're doing this sort of thing, I'd have to look at this piece in detail and see how to finger it, but I don't want to do that right now. How good is maple syrup in Canada, eh? Yeah, it's pretty good. Heard it's the bomb. Yeah, it's the bomb. I should mention it is the second movie. Yeah, okay, we looked at that. My friend asked a pretty funny question. What piano sonatas could be plausible to learn after the Opus 2 number 1 in F minor? I recommend Hummel Sonata in E flat major. Well, that's cool. Hummel sonatas are rarely played. I don't know them very well. I've listened to them at least once, but what piano sonatas in general? You know, that Beethoven sonata is not necessarily the easiest sonata. So it depends what you want to learn, but something for that level. You know, there's so many Haydn sonatas. There's the Haydn C major Hoboken 50 sonata is really good. So that's them. I remember learning. I learned that sonata, and I think the Grieg sonata as well. There's a sonata by Grieg that's beautiful. That's a great piece. So it's good if you have big hands. It's probably more complex than that Beethoven, you know, because it's less classical. So it's much more going into the more romantic kind of writing. But it's a great sonata. Opus 7 in E minor, piano sonata. That's it. Yeah. Hi, Zana. Hey, Matthias. Glad you could make it. Matthias talked a little bit about your question in the beginning. What I said was actually, yeah, I gave this exercise. Maybe you'll check later in the beginning of the live stream, but it's to play doing this sort of thing sometimes can really get rid of some tension that's in the hands here. Because if you play, let's say, a chord and you're stuck where this is locked, because I'm guessing it might be a tightness in the hand, but you have to kind of identify where you're feeling tense in the body. Because it's not just because you're doing a wheel or rotation that it's going to help. But anyway, check that when the stream is over, you know, and doing this sort of thing, if it's in the hand, if you feel like it's here that you're locked and playing like this, instead of like this, a more relaxed way, well, you can do this. You kind of lift the thumbs off and move the hands sideways as you're playing, let's say, forward in like this. And that should help you feel what it's like to have very little tension. Yes, Matthias is in the house. Okay, scrolling. Yeah, that Grieg sonata is really amazing. See, I think I learned both those sonatas before I learned that Beethoven F minor sonata. And they were all around the similar time. Clementi sonata in B flat major. There's some beautiful Clementi sonatas. It sounds like it's he's looking for a really classical sonata. You know, there's what other easier Beethoven sonatas are there around that difficulty? I suppose the one with variations there, I can't remember what number it is, 8 or something, or 11. I'm looking to start recording some tutorials of my own. That's great. I want to give you a shout out because your videos are damn good. When you talk of wheel, drawer, etc., are those names your own? Those names are not my own. Rotation is something that's been talked about for a long time. I think Liszt was talking about rotation. Wheel and drawer, those are the names I learned from Marc Zurin, who would teach a lot of those things. But I don't think he came up with it either. The drawer might be something he came up with. I have more examples of drawer, by the way. If someone wants them, I could explain it a bit better. Because you know, wheel is very you know, it just makes a wheel, so it is a good way of describing it. I don't remember what Gwen called them when I studied with her. Who was Gwen? Gwen who? Should octaves be played with a push away from the body or a pull towards the body? Push away from the body or a pull towards the body? Okay, so I think you're saying should they be played like this or like that? It depends where you are, you know, because if you're doing, let's say, like, oh, let's take I want to do this listen. I can't remember what key it was in, but it's after the. Why don't I just get it out? Because that would be a good place to look at this. Yeah, it starts out. There's one in C major first. Let me just take that out so we can look at it. Let's see, it's in the binder here. Got to put all these scores in binders that are all written up. So let's say you have octaves that are doing scales, which is what we have here. So here, I wouldn't say you're pulling back, but you have to shape this. And again, if you bring it up with the waist, it makes it a lot easier. So again, that's kind of driving the weight from your sitting bones. see I would play the white one back, I think. Let me try this one. It's not something I usually think of. In general, it's more a question of how you're guiding the wrist around the white and black keys for something like this in this example. I don't know if that's similar to what you had in mind. But see, it's kind of a little higher on the black keys, and then I bring it down. Whereas on the white keys, you just kind of have to make it up because there's nothing going on. You're not forced to move around, you know. So doing this, moving forward to the black keys should do this, and moving to white key, it kind of comes down a bit more. So, but I definitely don't go in on the white key in a forward way. You're just losing time trying to do this sort of thing with that. And then actually another place we could look at, let's say, is you know, that octave thing we have here. So here, try to do things in the front as much as possible as a general rule. That's what I would say. So if you can do it in the front, do it. And play backwards when you have to prepare something in the front. Let's say, because this one is more important. You want to do it in the front, so you can do this one backwards, so that you have this. See, you can't do them both in the front, or you'd have to come back in between, and you don't have time. So you come back on this one and go forward on that. That's quite a fun and annoying passage at the same time. So I hope that answers your question a bit. It's a little bit of both, going in and out. Okay, let's go through here. Yeah, other university professors are using that, so wheel and rotation for sure. Although drawer, yeah, I don't know if anyone other than Mark, I think Mark had come up with that. I'm not sure. Okay, let's see what we have here. Oh, Chopin 10-2. And a couple of several other questions. Okay, I think I'm gonna answer these, and then we'll have to end this feed soon. But let's see. 10-2. Yeah, okay. Another Chopin etude I've never finished learning, but there's a couple of things. I remember again seeing Avidis Kuyumjan teach this, and he would say, actually, this was so funny, that this wasn't the melody, you know, that it was actually, it was actually that. But he would do things like this. I think that's a very good idea. And you can also do things like this. Just, that's both notes. So you hold this. And the reason why is you have to be really relaxed on the note you're holding down. Then just repeat one of the notes. So this is just the second finger. Then you can do the thumb. And that should help a lot. I think you also have to go in every time you have a chord. So again, see how this, we play forward like that. So then just let it naturally come back in between to get the next one. And that should help a lot. Dum, dum, dum. Okay, Matthias says, I tend to get pain in my arms after practicing fast runs for a longer time, even though I work with wheel rotation as yeah. Okay, this was the question you asked me. Yeah. So I think we've covered that. I am quite fine, Zana. Thank you very much. My question is, do we need curved fingers when we play scales, especially fast scales? Of course, with rotation. Some people refer to the wheel as rotation, it would appear. But curved fingers when playing fast scales. Let's see. Let me curve my fingers. I find in general transferring the weight is very hard if the fingers are very curved. So, but since scales are so fingery to begin with, and then straight fingers, I don't know. I suppose I would not curve them too much. That's not something I ever teach anyway. I don't want to tell you to stop doing it if it's not causing problems for you. But see, if you want to transfer like this, it's not really going to work if your fingers are curved. I find you tend to kind of also like slip on the keys a little bit. So I would say in general, no, we don't need curved fingers in order to play them fast. But you can also experiment and see if it's helping you play it faster. See, see from your own experience. Joel has a relatable question for everyone. How do you personally deal with stage anxiety, and do you have any tactics for getting them under control? Okay, good question. So, this is kind of a little bit like what I had mentioned before, although that's maybe not exactly stage anxiety, but what I said in the beginning of the stream was actually having the intention, not just the intention, but um, thinking about what it is that you want to share, as well as I'm losing my thought here. What was it I talked about? I can't even remember. But anyway, anxiety. Oh, how it is you want to feel when it's over. How it is you want to feel at the end of the performance. I find that kind of really makes a difference for some reason. So you can think about that. You know, how would I like to feel when it's over? And I usually just think about like, you know, when I just finish the piece and stand up and bow and something like that. But anxiety, boy, is there any way to deal with anxiety? That's a tough one. It's tough to deal with because you can't, I don't know if you can like just get rid of it and not be nervous, you know? You could maybe try to identify what it is that makes you nervous, because there's some situations that do and don't, you know? So let's say if you're trying to, if there's someone who you're really impressed by who's in the room, then that makes you more nervous because this person is listening and you want to make a good impression on them because, you know, so whereas if it's your mom or something, you're not nervous, you know, unless your mom's your piano teacher and she really makes you nervous. Dealing with nerves is, I don't know if there's like a solution to just like shut off anxiety and not feel it, you know. So it's kind of hard to say. There's maybe approaches you can have that kind of build your confidence so that you're less nervous in general and more confident and assertive of what it is you're able to do. What I like to tell myself is if I play at my best, it's going to be amazing. And if I play at my worst, it's still amazing. So that kind of takes a lot of pressure off. I think also just giving, sometimes what I do is I'll give myself permission to like screw up some things, you know, because we're human beings and it's just normal. Like we have this expectation to play everything perfect. Plus, we listen to recordings of amazing pianists and we compare ourselves to them, and so often they're like in a recording session where they had to take many takes and edit things, so it's not a good way of comparing. And even sometimes a live concert, hearing someone play something flawlessly, they've played it for years and you're playing it for the first time. So how can you expect to play it, to compare yourself to someone who has that kind of experience, you know? So that kind of just takes a lot of pressure off your back, I think, if you think of that when performing. Just give yourself permission to make some mistakes. I'll tell myself that sometimes. You know, kind of have this intention, like I'm gonna go, and I'll also do this thing, you know, where I'll just tell myself I'm gonna go and do a fucking great job, and it's gonna be fantastic. And yeah, I'll like screw up a little few of the things, and I don't care, and it doesn't matter, and it's not so important anyway, because you know, if you're well prepared, then it's fine. If you're not well prepared, then that's another story. You need to prepare better. So if you're just nervous because you don't prepare very well, then that's something else. Beethoven Opus 79 is a very beautiful and exciting sonata that isn't too challenging. Okay, there's one. I'm not sure which one that is, but that might be in a good one. How much repertoire do you keep ready to play cold? I find it hard to keep a lot of pieces ready uh, without relying purely on muscle memory. Yeah, that's a very difficult thing. I tend to, I find that the things that you've forgotten and relearned like 3 times, you'll find that that kind of memory starts to be really strong. So there's a few pieces, like maybe 4 or 5 pieces that I know kind of like that. I've relearned them so many times, but then there's usually something that I've learned recently that I tend to keep somewhere nearby. If it's something you haven't played in only like 2 or 3 months, it's not too hard to pick up. Although on cold you might not be able to. But it's especially the pieces that you forget and you relearn that you're going to find you have a lot of ability to play on cold in memory. I would say in general, if you have 1 or 2 pieces like that, that's pretty good that you just kind of maintain in that way. Do you use imagination when you play in performance? I suppose. I think so. I think everyone feels things in different ways. Um, Someone once told me that I feel things very abstractly, which I somehow related to. So I don't know how much I use like visual things while I'm performing, but sometimes ideas do come while practicing. Yeah, so I don't tend to do that very much. Like, but I think it can be a good thing. If you come up with some kind of story to go with the music that's personal to you, those are good ideas. But I tend to when performing, I like to really just think about the sound that it is I want to make and the music and where it's going and what's coming up next and this sort of thing, and really what the composer is trying to say with the music. That's more the kind of thing that I'm thinking of rather than like imagining some story. But there are images that do come to mind, yes. How much do I practice a day? Between 0 and 8 hours, my friend. Uh, yeah, it really varies. I would say I practice almost every day. Minimum probably an hour, but that's like nothing, for me because I have so much work to do. So, and I find there's also a limit, after like practicing 5 hours, it's a lot of time. Sometimes you stop practicing quite so well. So, but there's some days because of rehearsals, I'll end up practicing quite a lot because I'll practice maybe 2 hours on my own, then I have a 2 hour rehearsal with so and so, and then another 2 hour thing later. So I'm at the piano for 6 hours. But it's a very variable thing. It's not something I schedule. Kabalevsky Third Sonata. That could be cool. Clementi F sharp minor. Is that what is the one? That's a very beautiful Clementi sonata. It was Beethoven's favorite sonata, actually. Let's say just a few more questions, guys, and we're going to end the stream. Okay. I can work out. I can't work out a comfortable fingering for the opening run of Liszt Transcendental Etude number 4. Whoo, number 4. That's Mazeppa. Okay, thank you for asking these questions on really complicated pieces. I love it. So again, let's get that Mazeppa out. Here we go. I can maybe help you with that. Show you what I did in there. Comfortable finger for the opening run of Liszt Transcendental Etude number 4. The opening run. So that's this thing. I have the Peters edition. I think I did exactly that fingering. Not quite, because there's a 4 here. Maybe look at, I don't know if you have the Peters edition, but those fingerings work very well. I didn't change anything from there. They just worked very, very well. So you start with 4 in the left hand, then you have 1, 2, 1, back to 4, 4, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1, back to 4, and then 1, 2, 3. 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1. Check out the Peters edition. That you might find some very good fingering there. I don't know which one you have, but they're actually pretty good in that. Hi King, can I play Turkish March on 1.5 speed? Is that like a very fast version of Turkish March? Stage anxiety, just down 2 shots of whiskey before performing. Joking, yeah. It does help to practice messing up with flair so you can auto-correct the audience. Yeah, there's something about, when you're in this kind of state where you mess up and it's such a big deal for you that everyone feels so uncomfortable. And when you just don't give a shit, there's no, people don't even notice. And everything you do, if you do with conviction, people will like that, and it doesn't really matter what you're doing. So you try to do something as beautiful as you can, but if you do it with conviction, people will always be like, even if it's garbage, they're like, wow, that was amazing. So that really helps. How do you know a piece? Last question. Lazy Swooshy. Hi, Lazy Swooshy. How do you know a piece is too difficult for you? Well, I think you need a teacher to tell you that, because it's kind of hard to tell. But let's say if you're just, working on something and it could be that you have lessons on it and it's just not advancing. It takes so long to learn. After 1 year, you're still not able to play it. Then, obviously you picked a piece that was too difficult for you, or you're not getting a kind of instruction that's helping you play that sort of piece. But I guess you would have to rely on a teacher to know exactly if it's too difficult. Are you working on something now that's you think might be too difficult, or something you'd like to? Yeah, it's good. It's good to get advice from someone who has a lot of experience, like some teacher or someone who's played a lot, because they have a kind of outlook. It's like climbing up a high mountain. You can see a lot from there, so you can kind of like compare difficulties of a lot of different things. And also, if he knows the way you play and what's easy for you, your strengths and your weaknesses, well, that can also affect the judgment on that. Okay, guys, well, this is the end of this stream. Thank you very much for joining. It's been a pleasure as usual. The next stream is going to be Wednesday at 1 p.m. I believe that is correct. If it's not, it's in the description anyway. You have it right there. There's going to be another one on the weekend after, the following weekend. If you want to support this channel, visit the Patreon page. Have a look at that. For the $10 reward tier a month, you have access to a bunch of exclusive lessons, which are on stephenmassicotte.ca.